Hey guys, N54 Garage here, and this will be part one of the N54 engine build. So I picked up a new head from the junkyard, and I just went ahead and took out all the valves and the springs. I got it decked, got it inspected by the shop. They said everything is good and in spec. Cleaning and polishing these valves just so I can get them nice and clean. I will show you guys a process of what I was doing to clean them and to get them looking this good. Here's my old block. Also got it decked, and I got the cylinders honed. Overall, the machine shop that said that cylinders were pretty good. So in this video, I'll basically be just installing the crankshaft with the new bearings. I went with standard size bearings by King Bearings, and I'm gonna check all the clearances to make sure everything's in spec and ready to go. Also went ahead and bought some new valve stem seals, just so we can have the head fully freshened up and ready to go. All right, so I got these bearings on. You can't really mess this up. These bearings with the groove go on the block, and that little notch goes in the notch in the block. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna put the crank in the block, and then I'm gonna put a piece of plastic gauge on each part of the crank, and then put the bed plate back on. So don't use any lube. And then I'm using the old bed plate bolts, and I'm gonna torque it to spec, just so I can test the clearances to make sure everything's in spec. All right, so I torqued all them down to spec. So first it was 20 newton meters and 70 degrees. And now I'm gonna pull the bolts off, and we're gonna check the clearances. All right, so the clearance is supposed to be between 0.02 or 0.020 or 0.046. So between those two numbers is in spec. And let's see, we're around 0.038. So we're just in spec, each one of them. So we're good to go. Now I can go ahead and lube each bearing up on the engine and also on the bed plate. So just using this assembly lube from Lucas. As for sealing the bottom, I'm just gonna use just standard RTV. I really did not want to spend like 150 bucks on the BMW sealant. So I'm just gonna use this stuff right here. I heard, it works. Other people use some other RTV, but RTV is RTV. So I'm just gonna give a small bead, not too thick, all the way around, and we should be good to go. Just rotate the crank a few times, just nice and slowly. Feels pretty nice. Also, make sure you guys use new bolts. All torqued down. Let's give it a spin. Ooh, man, she spins so nice. Now let's just get the rest of these little aluminum bolts torqued down. These bolts are torqued to 15 Newton meters and 90 degrees. And these side 4 bolts, so these two and these two, these are 10 Newton meters and also 90 degree. So the crank is in. Everything moves nice and freely. I'm very happy. Now it's just time for some pistons and rods. So these are the pistons and rods that I went with. These right here are GE pistons. They are 84 millimeters. So I just went with this, standard bore. And right here are the Manly rods. I don't know if that's what you guys pronounce those, but that's the choice that I went with. I wanted to go with Molnar rods, but they were way out of stock and I couldn't get my hands on them. I tried, but I couldn't get them, so I just went with these. I heard pretty good reviews with these. These aren't too bad. These are pretty good. So I already went ahead and I already got my rings. You can watch videos, other videos on YouTube on how to do that. I got my rings according to the sheet. So I went with the Street Moderate, the Turbo Nitrous. So the top ring is, times your bore, which my bore is 3.307 times this number, and that's what I got. That's what I had to get my top ring to. And for my bottom ring, it's times this number. So, your bore times your bottom number, times this number. And for the bottom ring, I ended up with 0.019. So they're already all gapped and good to go. This is the grind tool that I use for the rings. It's just some eBay, Amazon, a ring grinder. Just take your time with it. This is what I'm going to be using to put the pistons in, to compress the rings. I use this, it's not the best tool, but it's a simple tool. Make sure all your cylinders are clean and good to go, and we'll go from there. As for the bearings, I went with King bearings. These are standard fit. I did not mess with the crank, so these should fit in perfectly. I will check the clearances beforehand. We got the pistons and rods and the whole rotational assembly in. Give it a spin for you guys. Everything spins nice and freely. I also have the ARP studs in. I went with the 11 and the 9 mil. I'll be using a cut ring. This is a Vulcan cut ring gasket. I will also be installing this VTT spline crank hub. So what I'm gonna probably do now is I'm gonna throw on this gasket right here, and I'm gonna throw the head on. Make sure the mating surfaces are clean. All right, so when you guys are putting these rings on, there's a side where there's 3 little sharp edges, and then there's a flat side. Make sure the flat side goes onto the block, and the 3 rings, they point towards the head. All right, so I put the head on. Now I made this little sheet. So for the 9 mil ARP studs, I'm gonna do 15, 30, and then 45 for the initial. And then for the 11 mil studs, I'm gonna do 33, 60, and then 95 with this pattern. I know it's just a lot easier for me to write it down. And then these 4 outer bolts, so 1, 2, 3, then 4, they're just torqued down to 22 Newton meters. When you guys are applying this grease, make sure you apply it on the bottom side, and same as with the nut. So basically on both sides, just use the grease that comes with the ARP kit. All right, all the nuts are on, good to go. Also, as for installing the studs, when you screw the studs in, as soon as they hit bottom, you guys are done. You know, there's no initial torque for the studs. As soon as they hit the bottom, you're done. All right, so first we're doing 33 on the 11 mil. Doing 15 on the 9 mils. Now we're doing 60 on the 11 mils for round 2. £30 for the 9 mils for round 2. Okay, now we're just gonna let them sit just for a few minutes. Let the studs release some stress, and we'll do the final torque. Now for the final torque spec, we're doing 95 foot-pounds on the 11 millimeter studs. And now we're doing 45 for the 9 mil studs. All right, so the head is all torqued down, good to go. I'm feeling pretty good about this. Now all I need to do is just torque these to 20 newton meters, these 4 bolts. All right, so now I'm going to be installing this VTT crank hub. All right, so just a quick side note. So when I purchased the crank hub, I just purchased the crank hub by itself without the oil sprocket. So my initial thought was, okay, I'm going to use my stock oil sprocket. But it turns out that the stock oil sprocket does not work with this hub. Because as you know, BMW made an updated hub, and which it also has the updated oil sprocket. So this is the updated oil sprocket, and you see how it's, I can't even get it on. All right, there it is. See how it's a lot more tighter and it's not loose. So just keep in mind, make sure you guys order the right sprocket. So this is just gonna go in first. It's gonna go in basically like this, and then it's gonna be held on by this one bolt. Oil chain module is on, same with the oil pump. I didn't fully screw it down yet. I'm just gonna keep it loose for now. Keep these areas clean, use some brake cleaner to clean these areas where, the friction discs sit. Make sure you guys are also using a new crank hub bolt. So this bolt will be torqued down to, let me see if I remember, 100 newton meters, and then it's gonna be 360 degrees. Make sure you put your chain in first. This is a brand new chain, timing chain. All right, so everything is on, and you guys will also need this tool. I just picked it up on eBay. Can't remember how much. It was like $80-something. But for the 100 newton meters, this should be enough. But I wouldn't recommend doing, the initial 360 turn, because this is a weak point. It might break. So I'm gonna need another person to help me out with this. All right, so I have 100 newton meters. So as you guys are tightening the bolt, the spline should start to eat into the crank. Just take your time, go slow, don't go too fast with it. And as soon as, you get 100 newton meters, then we do the 360 degree. You guys should see the gap on the crank and the oil sprocket. On the crank hub and the oil sprocket getting smaller. So that means that the spline is eating into the crank. All right, so the spline is fully set in, and now let's torque it to 100 newton meters. All right, we're done. So there's my mark, and now 160 degrees. We should be good to go. I can't get any help right now, so I'm kind of solo. So hopefully this setup works. I'm pretty positive it probably will. You know, wish me luck. It's getting pretty hard, so I'm gonna have to use this from the jack. Woo! All done. Right where we need to be. I'm actually surprised. This worked a lot better than I thought. All right, so now I'm putting the oil pump on. Okay, so this is kind of where I'm at right now. So the motor's already timed. Got cams. The cams are in, injectors are in with new seals and decouplers. Oil pan's on. I really didn't want to paint the oil pan, so I just cleaned it up as best as I could. And this was the motor that was originally in the car. This was the replaced motor. So now all I really need to do is just throw the hot parts back on, the kit, and all the rest of the alternator, the AC, and the steering pump. And then I'll have to take it off the stand and put the clutch on and the trans. There you go, guys. It started. The car actually runs really nice. Like, look at that. I did get a file from my tuner, so I have that flashed already. And now the only thing we really need to do is just brake in the car, and I will also have to retorque the head because I have the cut ring head gasket. Stay tuned, guys. I will be making update videos